Hello, it's me again, and today I'd like to speak about the power of setting boundaries. This video is going to look at the definition of boundaries, how to set them, why they are important, and how to set the consequences for instances where people are not respecting your boundaries. So in a nutshell, boundaries are personal limits that protect your well-being and define how you expect others to be treated you. It is important to note that setting of boundaries helps maintain healthy relationships, reduces stress, and promotes self-respect. Now, how do we go about setting our boundaries? First of all, we identify through reflection on what makes us uncomfortable, what gives us stress, and we recognize our own emotional, physical, and mental boundaries so that we are able to communicate them with people. We have to be clear, we have to be specific in defining these boundaries, because if we are not clear about them, we are going to create misunderstandings and sometimes find that people are viewed to be disrespecting our boundaries, but they are actually not, because we just didn't communicate them properly. So if you're one of those people who likes to relax when you come home from work, you have to communicate this with your family as an example, to say, when I come back from work, please give me 30 minutes. I'd like to recalibrate so that I could leave work behind and be present and aware with you guys. Would you please just give me some time every time I come from work? Then you need to start small. When we start setting boundaries, now remember, you need to know who you are, what your values are, what are these things that you would like to achieve in your life, and what is it that you are putting in place to be able to achieve these goals. And you do that by sitting down and understanding what your values and goals are. Once you know, then you are in a position to set boundaries. Start small. Begin with setting boundaries in less challenging situations and gradually move to more significant areas in your life. So once you've set these boundaries for yourself, you've written them down on paper, they align with your values, this is what you want. You have to communicate them with the people in your life. You have to be assertive. By using I statements, you are then in a better position to express your needs without blaming other people around you. Okay, you have to be direct, you have to be respectful, communicate these boundaries in a calm way, in a respectful way, avoiding at all cost any passive aggressive behavior, and avoid being apologetic to the people around you when it comes to your boundaries. Now remember, when communicating with people when it comes to boundaries, remember your communication style is also very important. We communicate using body language, we communicate with specific tones, and we have to be able to communicate with these people using and watching out for non-verbal body language, tone that can reinforce the message. Maintain eye contact and be confident about what it is that you're speaking about when you're communicating these things with your people. Then you have to implement consequences. So when you put your boundaries down, you have to be able to implement consequences, establish clearly, stating what will happen if a boundary is crossed. Okay, this is very important, because we are in a position now when we can set boundaries, but without consequences, setting boundaries is a useless exercise. So you have to communicate what happens if these boundaries are crossed or disrespected. Then we need to be consistent. Follow through with the consequences that we have set. This then reinforces the importance of the boundaries that we set. When implementing consequences for these boundaries, we need to stay calm, but we have to respond firmly if a boundary is crossed. Please avoid getting angry and avoid getting emotional. It is not helpful. So when you enter and you start doing this exercise of setting boundaries, please understand that if you've never done it before with the people that you're doing it with right now, you might experience pushback. So you have to prepare for that. Expect resistance, because some people may not be understanding or may not be in a position to respect your boundaries at the beginning, initially. So be prepared for that pushback. Then you have to stay firm, politely reiterating your boundaries and the consequences if they are not being respected. You have to be willing to reiterate and explain it to people that this is what you mean. If they continue to disrespect your boundaries, please do not be afraid to reevaluate your relationships. There are very important relationships that we have in our lives, but the relationship we have with ourselves are the most important relationships. Guarding our well-being is quite important. So don't be afraid to reevaluate your relationships. If someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, consider the nature of your relationship with that person. Okay? Because self-care forms part of forming boundaries. Once you understand that boundaries are a very important part of self-care, then you will not be afraid to reevaluate some of the relationships that you are in. So, how do we do this, and what is very important when you start implementing this exercise? I have to say this. Yesterday I released a video on self-reflection. It's very difficult to set boundaries, communicate those boundaries, implement consequences of those boundaries when somebody breaks or crosses the boundary if you don't self-reflect. You have to regularly assess your boundaries and adjust them as and when needed. Your needs will change over time and your boundaries will change over time. And when this happens, do not forget to communicate it with the people in your life. It is very important to understand that the only constant in life is change, and we need to have enough flexibility to be able to adjust ourselves. When you adjust, communicate the adjustment. It's very important. If you're finding it difficult to implement and set boundaries and implement the consequences of the boundaries, please do not be afraid to seek professional help. There are people who are trained specifically to help you through processes like this. As you go through your own self-development journey, you are able to get yourself a coach, to get yourself a therapist who will guide you and help you put these boundaries in place and align them with the values and the goals that you have put down for yourself. So do not be afraid to seek support if you find that you are not winning in this specific area. Please remember, setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It is an act of respect. It empowers you to take control of your life and protect your well-being. Your physical, spiritual, and mental well-being. It is very important. So I am going to encourage you to share your experience with setting up boundaries to inspire and encourage others to do the same. Please, if you can, put your experiences with setting boundaries in the comments and let's discuss it further if you have more tips on how we can start implementing boundary setting and what your experience has been. I'll truly, really appreciate your feedback on this subject. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next time. Goodbye.